whose presence is here with us this morning. It's good to be in the house of God.
Amen.
Or you thought you only had to be back at your church to be in the house of God? No, wherever we are, it becomes the house of God because we are the people of God and God dwells in us. So whether we are under a coconut tree at the beach or in the conference room at the hotel, we are in the house of God. Amen? Hallelujah. Blessings, blessings, blessings to Mr. and Mrs. Straker, brothers and sisters. Thank you for sharing your story, your journey, and those wonderful lessons learned along the way.
Amen.
So they shared with us the before and the during, leading up to marriage, pointers, how to prepare, and a little bit about their own continuing journey of marriage. The words that the couple are typically led through during the marriage ceremony are lofty words, and they speak to a high ideal. They speak to a kind of utopian expectation, and it's good to have great expectations. We should aim high and dream high, and then ensure that we work towards actualizing that which we have visualized. Because that's what it is, a visualization of the future. Vision. The picture, a clear mental picture of the preferred future is how Dr. John Maxwell explains vision. And I think of the marriage ceremony, the vows, as a vision. If ever something comes close to what happily ever after looks like, it's that way. In better and in worse, sticking together and forsaking all others and keeping yourself only unto him and only unto her, and all of that. And we have the wonderful ceremony, and the dress is wonderful, and the tux is just off the chain, and the bridesmaids and the groomsmen, and everything is wonderfully color-coded and color-matched. And the cake is just perfect. And the decor. And the honeymoon. Oh my goodness. Parasailing and bobsledding and skiing, perhaps. You get to go to the Alps and all of that. And then life happens. That's not the come back. Sometimes on the way back. Or while you are there on the honeymoon. Life happens. I was thinking the other couple days ago as we were preparing for the episode on our podcast, my wife Latoya and I, this is Latoya over here, we recently started a podcast called This Is Us. Your stories, our journey, your journeys. And we were preparing to have as our guest a young lady, my batchmate at seminary, to share her story of becoming a widow, a young widow. And I was thinking to myself, we say till death do us part, and what we really mean is that until we die, until we both die, perhaps ideally, I would purpose say, I don't want to go first, or I don't want my partner to go first. I prefer we both go together. But then the family is going to have a double burial. How selfish of us, right? To put the family through having to bury two people all at once. But we say till death do us part, and deep down, subconsciously, what we really kind of mean is that until death separates us, we are going to do us. But as far as this death is concerned, we don't think about it. I mean, Who thinks about that? We plan and we live and we do, and we have our marriage and we work at it. We don't think about it, but it's part of the reality. Do you even realize that we're talking about a Naomi and a Ruth because death happened?
That's right.
Calling the death too?
That's right.
For Naomi's own the loss of her own husband. She herself was a widow, wasn't she? Yeah. She lost her husband, and she had her sons keeping her company and protecting her and watching over her and so on. And then her sons each got a wife. And then her 3 sons died. That's a holy death. That's a holy marriages ending in death. So we don't think about it, but even the very focus pair, Naomi and Ruth, for the conference should remind us that there is an after in marriage, the possibility of death of a spouse. And then also the possibility of divorce. The average person, I want to think, does not go into marriage thinking about divorce, expecting, anticipating divorce. There are some people who actually do. That's the plan, right? That's exactly the plan. You know, so you find a very rich person and you make sure that they're, you know, you set things up, you organize things, and then you orchestrate the divorce. But apart from those, the rest of us, we don't expect it, but it's part of the reality. So my task is to just talk us through a little bit. What happens when there is death of a spouse, one person becomes widowed, or there is the loss of a spouse through divorce? How can we as a faith community, and even how can just we as people, as fellow human beings, as fellow travelers, support such persons? Tough stuff. Rough stuff. The stuff that we don't really talk about and we don't like to think about. And sometimes, unfortunately, the stuff that we are very ill prepared as a faith community to deal with. Because we don't plan for it, we don't prepare for it, we don't organize ourselves for it and around it, we don't budget for it, we don't staff for it. We just don't, and when it happens, those who are most affected, those who are in it, sometimes they end up the worse for it. And then in the case of divorce, there is that matter of the theology or lack thereof around divorce, and how the ways in which we have castigated the divorced and thought of divorce in a kind of broad-brushed way as the untouchable thing, and the divorcee as somehow someone who is damaged, as damaged goods, as unwanted even by God. You know, I find it rather fascinating, some of the glaring inconsistencies that we hold. We make statements, and rightly so, about God's grace. The amazing nature of God's grace. We see amazing grace, how sweet the sound. And I was all wonderful, the matchless grace of Jesus Christ. Grace, God's grace greater than all my sins. And we say, the blood of Jesus and the cross of Jesus, it covers all. But then in reality, in how we treat with and how we deal with certain persons, What we communicate is that, what we really mean is that God's grace is all encompassing, and God's grace covers all except, how do you even get all except? Once except comes into the picture, it ain't all anymore, right? But we're quite comfortable speaking like that. We don't say it with our lips, but by our actions. That's what we are saying. God's grace is all-encompassing, except these persons and those persons and such a person and when and if. So there is that other matter that makes it even more difficult for the divorced person in religious circles. We shy away from it, we just prefer not to even want to talk about it. And then, God forbid, if the divorced person happens to be a church leader. The line is drawn down straight down the middle across various denominations where that is concerned. In some cases, the moment you become divorced as a church leader, that's it. End of career, end of ministry. Don't even think, don't even ask. I ain't that. Any non-Jamaican here? We understand that. That's it. There's no more hope for you. Just forget about it. And then in others, there are variations. Well, you may be allowed to continue ministry if and depending on the circumstances. And then there's all the speculation, right? All right, so who was at fault? Who caused it? Why is that even your business though? Whose fault was it and who caused it? Exactly. Something about it is, it's ended. It has ended in divorce. Should we start wanting to do our own investigation? To what end? To serve what purpose is that investigation of who was at fault and who caused it and who did what and who didn't do what? Shouldn't the entry point be helping the persons deal with whatever, all of the stuff that they are dealing with? And so I want us to start with approaching this from perhaps a theology of grace. Right? So I'm a theologian by training. I'm a public theologian in particular. And an author. I've written. Right? I have my first published book here with us. If you want to get copies. Let's major in the minors. An examination, lessons from the 5 quote-unquote minor books of the Bible, the 5 books of the Bible that contain only 1 chapter. And in each of those 5 books, one of the things I found remarkably interesting is that though they are so short for their brevity, they do not exclude teachings around that surround the essential nature and character of God. Who God is, communicating clearly who God is, and what breaks the heart of God. What matters most to God. And you know what one of the things? And God's heart for justice. So I want to start with just a quick scan of some key passages that communicate this theology of care that I believe is where we must start if we are going to have any proper positioning of ourselves, posturing of ourselves, as in terms of support for those who are experiencing those possibilities that can happen after marriage. That if we say that we serve God, now we must clearly understand who this God is. And this God, as we build in Scripture, among other things, one of his core nature, the essential nature of God. I saw something very interesting as I was preparing. In Psalm 68 and verse 5, it says, Father of the fatherless and protector of widows is God in his holy habitation. Do you know what comes before Psalm 68 verse 1? A lot of us would know it. And if we don't know it, you know who know it very well? The Rastafarians. Because they love to read it from the King James. Extol him that rideth upon the heavens and call him by his name, Jah. Not Rastafari. Jah. Do you know that Jah belongs to us? And the rest of the thing. A Christian thing. A Bible. So don't let nobody make you be afraid to call him by his name, Jah. Right? It is a shortened form of Yahweh. YHWH. Coming over from the Hebrew into English. The name that God revealed himself as to Moses at the burning bush. Call him by his name, Yahweh. Is really what that verse was saying. But the shortened form is Jah, transliterated as Jah into the English. So the verse before says, call him, extol him, give him praise, he that rideth upon the clouds, he that is in charge, he that is big, he that is above all, worship him, rejoice jubilantly, call him by his name that he has revealed himself as Yahweh or Jah. And then the very next thing the psalmist does is to describe this Jah. And look at what he says. Father of the fatherless and the protector of widows is God in his holy habitation. It's tying the protection of the fatherless and the protection of widows to God's holiness. Don't miss it. So when the word says, for example, be ye holy because I am holy, an extension of that is protect the fatherless, defend the widows, because I am holy. And if you want to be holy, you need to do the same. And that's a key verse. Then, let's go to the foundation, the antecedent of Ruth. You know what is the antecedent? What sets the foundation for Ruth? The whole story, the whole plot that Ruth was able to, that Naomi was able to say to Ruth, go to that field over there, it is harvesting time, wait until the workers have finished harvesting, and go pick up what has been left on the ground, and you will fill your sack with grain to take home. Do you know why Naomi was able to say that to Ruth? She was able to say that to Ruth because long before, over in Deuteronomy, when the people were about to cross over into the land of promise, God through Moses said to them at Deuteronomy 14, verses 28 and 29, at the end of every 3 years you shall bring up all the tithes of your produce in, oh, no, it's not that. No, that one. Let me get that one. Alright, so I know where I was going with that one. But anyway, in Deuteronomy, it had been laid down that a critical, fundamental part of the culture and the social fabric of the Hebrew people is that they must not go back and pick up the grain that has fallen after harvesting. Leave it for the orphans, for the poor, for the widows. And thank God, the Hebrew people, you know, the Israelites disobey God and holy, right? You know that. But they're not all bad. Thank God they obeyed on some other things, including that. So that years later, when Naomi says this to Ruth, it is because God had laid this down. Practically, build, this is how your society is to be structured. This is how you are to cater for those who are less fortunate. And over in the Old Testament, right through the prophets, there is hardly any of the major prophets and my so-called minor prophets who do not write about God. And in fact, there are passages, specific passages, where God speaks to judgment against those who do not prioritize the care of widows. Ezekiel 16:49 is one of them. Listen what God says about Sodom. Behold, this was the guilt of your sister Sodom. She and her daughters had pride, excess of food, and prosperous ease, but did not aid the poor and the needy. And then the passage I was going to read from Deuteronomy 14 a while ago, that laid out guidelines for the tithe. Specific instructions. Set aside the tithe. Bring the tithe into the storehouse so that the Levites, who got no inheritance when the land was being divided,
Amen.
and the orphans, the fatherless, and the widows shall have food. Now, I get in a lot of trouble for some of the things I say, and I have said to many churches, including the ones that I've had the privilege to serve at, if we insist on expecting people to tithe and use biblical passages to convince them to do so, the least we can do is to utilize the tithe in the way God said it should be utilized when it was instituted. Something is fundamentally wrong with a church that administers the tithe contrary to the purpose for which it was established. So how do we support the widows and the divorced? Because both, in different ways, find themselves suddenly in a situation where their economic stability becomes shaken. One of the practical ways is that the church, as a corporate body, and the church, the individual members, should think seriously about the ways in which we can provide financial support. It may mean the church, again as a corporate entity, working out a monthly stipend for the person. At least until they are able to fend for themselves. Now, in the case of my friend Camille, she became a widow she wasn't like maybe about in her early 30s at the time. Everything changes in a moment when you become a widow, especially as a female. And this is not intended to be sexist or misogynistic in any way. It's just being practical. Notice that again, from God's heart, when the instructions were laid down, part of what was to happen is that the sons that remained and any relative, the main relatives of the widow, it was their responsibility primarily to shield that widow from the adverse winds as far as provision is concerned. Now you understand a little bit better why Jesus had to step in when he's going up to the village of Nain. And you pay attention to the text. It says, a funeral procession was coming out, and she was a widow, and her son had died. And he was her only son, Luke tells us. Total exposure. No, husband has died. Her shield, her protector, her primary provider has died. The son who rose to take his place, the son is now dead. She is now totally vulnerable. Right? And the New Testament picks up this Old Testament motive of the primary character of God being concerned for the care of the most vulnerable among us. A divorced person suddenly becomes very vulnerable. A widow, utterly vulnerable. And what I want us to start by saying is that the heart of God, which is a heart of care, demands that we stop and ask ourselves, what are the practical ways that we can support such persons? So whether it is a monthly stipend, whether it is a collective, right? And then going beyond, of course, over time, we may find ourselves with multiple widows, and it may not be sustainable for the local assembly to be able to provide financial support. What do? Leave them on their own and say, well, anyway, mom and pop? No. So if the local assembly can't sustain it, it means that the national, we're talking now about the establishment of a fund, perhaps. A special fund. There's another very painful story in the Bible, in either 1st or 2nd Kings. I don't remember, more likely 2nd Kings, because it's in the time of Elisha. The widow of one of the members of the school of the prophets cried out to Elisha, they have come to take my son, my 2 boys. Painful. Obviously, the man, while he was busy prophesying, for whatever the reason, did not leave a legacy that would allow them to be able to manage financially. And that's a whole other conference topic in itself. Right? And the creditors, he left her in debt. Now, can I go back to your section of preparing?
Yeah.
Do you realize, single people, and we talk about that in premarital counseling, that when you become married, you take on each other's debt?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So if the man owe every shop in the district, the moment you sign that document, it becomes your debt too. And if he dies, it becomes your bill. So you have to know when you get married, who you get married to.
That's right.
For more reasons than one. The collectors come to collect, and under the customs of the time, if you can't pay the bill, we take your sons.
That's right.
Practically.
Yeah.
How do we ensure that our widows are not left in such embarrassing situations? We must each be committed to help. It must be planned, it must be organized at the local church level, it must be organized at the denominational level, at the national level, and even at the international level. Do you know that there are donor agencies all around the world that, with a properly written project proposal, will send lots of foreign exchange to help to fund such initiatives? Especially where they include empowerment. Right? Sasha is in the social work field, right? So that we're not giving people handouts. Right? So if this widow maybe never really worked and the man was a breadwinner, maybe she never acquired skills that would make her empowerable. Right? So you have a program that gets her up to speed, a partnership with our church, NSTA, and so on. Right? The tools, the partnerships and synergies are out there and they are available. What about something as practical as bringing them food? Like cooking the food. There are people who sink into the depths of depression when they become widowed or widowed. And when you get to that point, the most basic of tasks seem like a mountain. Somebody has to have the presence of mind enough to say, I will make sure that you eat. How many of us are conscious enough on a weekend when we prepare our nice meals, and take a little time and we prepare a little meal more so that we do during the week? Are we even conscious about the others as Jesus was? There's a section in the New Testament, in Matthew in particular, that I'm struggling with. I'm really struggling with it. Because it gives the impression, and I know that's not what it is, but what it says there is that it is where Jesus says that I will separate the sheep from the goat, and I will say to some, I was in prison and they didn't visit me. I was hungry and they didn't feed me. I was naked and they didn't clothe me. I was thirsty and they didn't give me something to drink. And he says, whatever you do to the least of these, you do unto me. And those who are the sheep will hear, come into my kingdom. And those who did not will be cast away. I'm struggling with it because I know we don't get into the kingdom of God on the basis of our works. But what the text is suggesting is that our responsibility and our duty to the less fortunate and those who are dispossessed is such a strong responsibility that it is a fundamental indicator of our salvation. Of staggering proportions. And so, support has to flow from our understanding of grace. We understand God firstly in His care, His justice, and then thirdly, in His grace. That the grace of God is so great that it encompasses all, particularly those who are suffering. Which is why to take the fundamental position of the only interest we have in the divorce is that of determining who is wrong or who is right, or determining whether or not they can continue to even be a member of our congregation, is not a function of the grace of God. I don't know who gave us the right as church people to determine who is now fit for God's grace. There is nothing in Scripture that suggests that a Christian who becomes divorced has now become written off by God. It is wrong, it is unbiblical, and we must change our posture. Am I suggesting that a couple, the members of a marriage, may not commit wrongs in the course of a marriage that can lead to divorce? Absolutely not. What I am suggesting, what I am positing, without any hesitation, is that even if and even where it is adultery that has resulted in that has led to a divorce, the individual or individuals have not been rejected eternally by God. And our posture as church, overall, we have not handled very well the ministry of restitution and reconciliation. So Galatians says, bear one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of God. If you are passionate about the law, if you are passionate about law keeping, that must extend to how we are willing to bear one another's burdens. Whether it is the burden of guilt that the divorced person feels and struggles with, somebody has to be prepared to sit with this brother if this brother has violated his covenant of marriage by committing adultery, and as a result his marriage ended in divorce. If he is a member of the congregation, some brother or some brothers must be prepared to go to a yard to find him whichever party and say, oh, we have a reason. We're not come to find out information to go chat. We have come to listen. We have come to say we are in this together. I will forever be impacted by how Jesus juxtaposed, held together at the same time, grace and an upholding of God's holy standards, as recorded in St. John 8, 1 to 12, the story of the woman taken in adultery. In his words, neither do I condemn you. Go and stop sinning. That's the aspiration. Brother, me not even want to get more details. You don't even want to hear what you do. You are here now. Me not condemn you. Whatever was wrong, let's see how we can work together to ensure that there is a repeat. How can we work together to get you back to a place of honor, a place of dignity? Right? So the theological foundation has to be us understanding God's grace, God's care, God's compassion, God's heart of love, God's heart for justice. As we listen and interact with those persons, we must understand when the person says, no, I don't want to talk. Sometimes we just love chat too much. We feel, and it's perhaps a burden that we feel when we have a word from God, or we have a passage I want to share with you because you're going through this. If the person says, I don't want to talk about it, respect that. Right? Respect that. Just listen. Provide compassion, not pity. What they need is not pity. Don't look at them in a way like you say, oh, poor you. I feel sorry for you. We don't need that. The person don't need that. The beauty, again, of Jesus, on at least 2 occasions, the beauty of the expression, when he saw that he was moved with compassion. The ability to enter into the person's situation and feel what they are feeling. In psychology, we talk about empathy. It goes beyond that. It's a spiritual empowerment to really feel. So the writer in Hebrews says of Jesus that he is our high priest who is touched with the very feelings of our infirmity. And as his representatives, he passes that on to us. So even if we may have never experienced what the person is going through, we must also be careful not to say to the person, I know what you are doing, I know what you are feeling. You don't. With the best of intentions. The only person who is uniquely qualified to say that to me, in my hurt and in my pain, is Jesus. And God knows the truth. Sometimes in my pain and in my situation, but I'm not even to one believes that Jesus himself understands. Right? So don't tell me you know what I'm feeling. No, you don't. Don't rush the person to heal. Lord, man. It's 1 year now since the man there. Get over it. Come, sister, it's 1 year now since the divorce. Come. Time come to go out on a date. No. Each one heals and moves at their own pace. We must not rush persons to move at our pace. Offer to come and clean the house. Who? Me? After me, I don't come. You notice that, over here with the gift of tongues. Oh yeah! Over here, the gift of prophecy. Yeah! Over here, the gift of helps. Anyone? Once? Going once? Anybody?
Yes, sir. It's a great.
Right? The gift of helps. That the Holy Spirit gives some of us the spiritual gift called the gift of helps. Sure on it. Right? Suggest ways to help rather than ask. So instead of asking, how can I help you? We don't know. What do you don't know? I'm offering to help. Tell me. The headspace is just not there. So offer, do you need anything done at the bank? Can I take the children to school? Right? The couple who had it neatly worked out how the kids get to school and so on, and then if divorce comes on or death comes, suddenly the simplest of things become monumental. The person is exasperated. How am I going to do this? Right? I mean, in our case, as simple as it is now, we can't take it for granted on any given day how Zakena and Zanele will get to where they need to get. Because I might have an early morning meeting and that's why I might have an out of town. And so we have to, and on any given day, some days I take Zanele to day 12 to our aunt who keeps her, some days I take Zach to school. And with the traffic and everything that you have to think about, offer ways in which you can help rather than ask. Right? Talk about the person's spouse. Now this one, again, you have to use some wisdom. Right? I know that the right timing. But we must not assume that because there has been a divorce or because there has been a death, that the person don't want to hear about the person. Even when it was divorce, the man was not always a Tegerek. The woman was not always a Jezebel. If that's how the person sees them at the point of divorce. There must have been even one good moment, good memory. Right? So there has to be a place where you help the person to reflect on the life of the person who is no longer present, whether through divorce or death. So I'm going to wrap up. A couple of quick ones, what not to say. What not to say. Because the what to say is just as important as the what not to say. Right? So a couple of quick examples. I've already said, I know what you're going through. So the alternative suggestion, instead of saying, I know what you're going through, you can say, it must be very difficult for you right now. I can't imagine what you're doing. So if you're acknowledging that the person is going through a difficult time, but you're also acknowledging your own inability to fully understand. And sometimes the best thing you can do is just to be present. I remember early in my pastoral ministry, I got a call maybe after 2 in the morning. One of our members, her son had been stabbed to death in Cassava Pieces, Kingston. And I had to get out of my bed and go to the house. And I'm like, I don't have a son at that time. I've never lost a family member through violence. What am I going to say? I mean, no class at JTS prepared me for that. And I just heard the Lord say, don't say anything. I got there, I called mommy, and I spent about an hour with them. I didn't say a word. But all these years later, about 2 or so years ago, they were going to clean the grave and do a little wreath laying and so on. And she invited me. And I had an appointment, and she said, all right, the pastor said we were going to shift the date because you have to get it. And she kept talking about how much she appreciated me just coming out of my bed just to be there. I didn't say a word, but it mattered, right? Don't say they weren't the greatest anyway. Exactly, who else am I here? Or you're still young, someone else will come along. Right? Camille shared that on the interview on the podcast. You know, some family members were like, You're young. Don't want to hear that. And if you don't mind sharp, you might get a good cussing from the person for saying the wrong thing. And if you get a good cussing from somebody for saying the wrong thing in their distress, you have nobody but yourself to take. Alright, so how do we care and support? We must start by repositioning ourselves in alignment with the God that we serve. Who is this God? He's Yahweh. He's the one who cares passionately for the dispossessed, because his core character is defined by love, his commitment to the care of the most vulnerable, his commitment to justice, and his defining character of grace. There are things that we can do, there are things that we should say, and things that we should not say. But overall, if we have never given serious thought to it, I think it is time, as we reflect on the ministry of Naomi and her role in Ruth's life, to seriously contemplate how can we as a church strengthen our preparation. If we have no widows currently, well, good. If we have no divorced ones and lovers, good. But it's going to come at some point. So how can we prepare? Or if they are already present, how can we better serve those among us whom the Bible clearly commits us to as a matter of priority? Perhaps coming out of this conference, one of the takeaways can be, how can we start something, however small, at each of our respective local assemblies? Right? And I've been more than happy to come and consult with you at your local church levels, or even at a national level, to help to get some of those things going. Right? Blessings.